The ANC National Working Committee has made sweeping changes to its provincial structures in Gauteng and Kwa-Zulu Natal. It's removed former provincial secretaries Bheki Mtolo and Nciza in the newly reconfigured provincial structures. Former ANC KZN Deputy Chair Mike Mabuyakhulu is set to make a political comeback in the province in a reconfigured provincial structure as coordinator. Essentially, he'll be given the responsibilities of running the organization in that province. Meanwhile, veteran politician Jeff Gaute will be convener of the same province, while in Gauteng, Nciza has survived the chop. He'll now be co-convener of the reconfigured structure with veteran politician Amos Masondo. Former Gauteng Provincial Secretary Hope Papo returns to Gauteng as coordinator of the reconfigured structure. Papo was provincial secretary under Paul Mashatile, you might remember, in his last term in Gauteng before he was elected Treasurer General. Watching all of these movements and to help us make sense of them is SABC News reporter, senior reporter that is Samkele Masego, who's with us in studio. 24 hours, a long time in politics, they say. And here we are again with these changes. I want to just take a few steps back before we drill into the names, Samkele. This essentially is a disbandment, it seems, with those leadership structures being replaced by these provincial structures.
Well, and if you look at the ANC constitution, particularly clause 12 subsection 12.2.4, it speaks about the suspension of a structure for 6 months, and it speaks about a disbandment. There's nothing about reconfiguration. But in ANC terms, to reconfigure, you have to disband first. So in essence, it is a disbandment. The provincial structure of KwaZulu Natal and of Gauteng has effectively been disbanded and has been reconfigured. So it's disbandment and reconfiguration in essence, because you can't just shift around a TK Nciza who's been elected as provincial secretary of Gauteng by branches of the party at their provincial conference without effectively disbanding the structure first, because you can't just chop and change after branches have elected unless you disband first and then you reconfigure. So they have disbanded these two particular structures and then they've reconfigured them. Those members of the PEC who were there, the additionals, they may still keep all of them in order not to divide the organization, but they may then add more people to the structure in additional members. For instance, if you go to Gauteng, the structure in Gauteng is bloated now in the terms of ANC officials provincially. Since it's not an elected structure anymore, you can chop and change and move around as much as you want. Hence, you've got two conveners, Amos Masondo and Panyaza Lusufi, who are the two conveners of Gauteng. Then you've got Nomanto Raluhu Kankomo, who is the deputy convener of the province. Then you go down, cascading it down. And that's how the structure in Gauteng has effectively been bloated in order not to deal with Panyaza Lusufi, because it will seem like it's a witch hunt against Panyaza Lusufi. Knowing the crowd appeal and the electorate appeal, he as an individual has on the electorate in Gauteng and broadly in South Africa with the type of politics he has displayed that many people are seemingly falling in love with his politics. So
help us understand what these roles entail. I mean, for example, what's the difference between a convener now in a province and a person who was elected leader of that province?
The difference is Panyaza Lusufi was the provincial chair. He was elected by over 800 branch delegates from all branches of Gauteng that made it to the provincial conference of the ANC in Gauteng. A convener is someone who's appointed, not someone who is elected. So Amos Masondo is not elected. He is appointed by the ANC's National Working Committee under the instruction of the National Executive Committee of the ANC that gave the NWC the powers and the officials to go and reconfigure these particular provinces. His task with Panyaza Lusufi, with Nomanto Raluhu Kankomo, with Hope Papo as the coordinator, with Tasnim Mutara and with Ntombi Mahwe is essentially, and the rest of the additional, I don't know whether they'll call it a provincial interim structure or an interim provincial structure or a PTT, a provincial task team. It's not yet clear. We will know tomorrow because Mbalula this afternoon will brief the two PECs of KwaZulu Natal and Gauteng of this particular reconfiguration. So essentially, these interim structures that have been constituted, their task will be to take these provinces to first recover lost ground and ultimately take them to their provincial conferences post the local government elections next year.
Yeah, and to do that, I'd imagine you need a whole lot of cohesion. You need a singular direction that everybody is being pushed towards. And the reason why I asked for what the distinction is between, for example, an elected official and somebody who's been appointed is who ultimately calls the shot around what the strategy looks like. Are Panyaza Lesufi's powers, so to speak, as an elected official, completely numbed out by this interim structure, so to speak?
Panyaza Lesufi's powers as an elected official, as of last night in the NWC meeting of the ANC, they are gone. They are finito. They are no longer there. He is now a co-convener, meaning he is sharing the powers of convening the province with veteran politician Amos Masondo. The secretariat goes to Hope Papo, the former provincial secretary of the ANC in Gauteng. He's also a member of parliament. He was a parliamentary liaison officer for Deputy President Paul Mashatile. I'm not sure if he's still within that particular role. He was within that particular role before the elections, after the resignation of David Dabete Mabuza. At this point in time, he is now the coordinator of Gauteng. One wonders whether he will still remain as a member of parliament, if he's still a member of parliament, or will he be now based full-time at the ANC's Walter Sisulu provincial offices in town, or Ruth First House offices, as if you are going towards Rosebank. So it's going to be rather interesting what happens within that perspective. But the powers that were delegated to the PECs by the National Executive Committee of the ANC has effectively, as of last night, been revoked from these particular structures. They've got no powers anymore. The interim structures that will be constituted will then be delegated powers by the ANC's National Executive Committee, working with the National Working Committee under the instruction of the ANC's national officials.
Crystal clear. Let's speak about some of the comebacks, so to speak. We mentioned Mike Mabuyakhulu, said to have a big presence in KwaZulu Natal. Jeff Radebe also making a return to politics in a sense, at least front-facing, so to speak.
If we look at KwaZulu Natal, Siboniso Duma, who was the provincial chairperson of the ANC in KwaZulu Natal, he's the now former provincial chair of that particular province. With the announcement that will be made this afternoon to the provincial structures by the Secretary General, he has retained, or he's been given a lifeline, if one may put it like that, as deputy convener of KwaZulu Natal to Jeff Radebe as a convener. In KwaZulu Natal, Fikile Mbalula, the Secretary General of the ANC, and the ANC's national officials have always said that the younger leaders of the ANC that were leading within that province have failed. They can no longer compete, or they can't compete with a flying machine or a jet of the MK of Jacob Zuma. So you need a super jet in order to contest that political party. And it speaks to the electorate of that province, largely elderly people, largely traditional rule, that you must be able to respect in Opkosini, respect the traditional house, respect the king.
And remember the mic grabbing incident.
And precisely that particular incident. So you must be able to pander into those cultural aspects of the province of KwaZulu Natal, remaining respectful to the electorate of that particular province. And this younger generation, Bheki Mtolo, Siboniso Duma, failed to rise to the occasion of the caliber of leadership of the likes of Sibusiso Ndebele, Sihlezi Galala, and many so forth who've led that particular province. Hence, you see the political comeback of Ndiema, Michael Mabuyakhulu, the former provincial chair, the former provincial treasurer of the ANC in KwaZulu Natal, and former deputy chairperson of that particular province, making a comeback as coordinator of the ANC in KwaZulu Natal. But interestingly, Ndiema has never been a secretary in the ANC. It will be the first time he occupies that particular position, and this instance it will be full-time at the ANC provincial office in Durban. So it's going to be interesting how he's able to navigate the dynamics of transitioning into that role of effectively being a secretary of the province of KwaZulu Natal, working with all of the 11 regions of the ANC in KwaZulu Natal and all of the regional secretaries within that province. Will they and this interim structure be going on an all-out wholesale to go and disband the 11 regions of some sort or not? But you'd also remember, and in the run-up to the elections, there was a proposal by the ANC National Executive Committee and the NWC that Michael Mabuyakhulu must be made elections coordinator in KwaZulu Natal. That was shot down by Bheki Mtolo and some of the ANC PEC members within that province. They ultimately lost the elections after they shot down the intervention of the ANC's highest decision-making body of the very same Mike Mabuyakhulu, who today effectively takes the job of Bheki Mtolo as quote unquote, the provincial secretary of KwaZulu Natal as a coordinator. So that is the most interesting political comeback. And knowing his proximity to President Cyril Ramaphosa of the African National Congress, he was one of those people who spearheaded Cyril Ramaphosa's campaign within that province with the likes of Senzo Mchunu, where Senzo Mchunu lost out in 2017 as provincial secretary. You also look at the lineage and the association of people. Michael Mabuya Khulu, largely linked with Senzo Mchunu, and that will just tell you the political machinations going forward within the ANC power dynamics and the role that they see Mike Mabuya Khulu playing as a coordinator, taking the organization back to the grassroots of the people, to the royal household, reconnecting the ANC with the Nazareth Shembe Church as well, where they've significantly lost ground. And that will essentially tell you that they wanted an elderly senior leader with stature, with respect in the business, private and public sectors, and also in the traditional households and Contralesa that can be able to bring these sectors of society back once again to the ANC.
Interesting indeed, and I suppose gives us a bit of a glimpse onto what the discussions behind the closed doors were like in that NWC meeting. Samkelo Masego, for now, thanks very much indeed. Samkelo, of course, our senior politics reporter, making sense of that imminent announcement we're expecting around the reconfiguration, disbandment, whichever term I suppose you find more palatable, of the leaders in Gauteng and KwaZulu Natal.